Welcome on board, chosen one. Step in, wipe the dust off your shoulders, and take a good look at the battlefield you just walked away from. Funny, isn't it? All that noise they made, all that talking they did, and yet, look who's still standing. You. The quiet storm they swore would never matter. The gentle one they thought they could crush with a few cheap words. The soft heart they mistook for weakness. They had no idea a warrior could walk in with a calm smile and still control the entire room. When they said you were too nice, they expected you to shrink. When they laughed at your kindness, they thought they were winning something. But here's the part they don't talk about. Every time they tried to step on you, they slipped. Every time they mocked you, they exposed their own insecurity. Every time they tried to dim your light, the universe turned up your voltage. Not because you begged for it, but because you earned it with the kind of heart most people are too afraid to carry. And look who's confused now. The same people who swore you were easy to play are pacing in circles, trying to figure out how someone so gentle could survive every hit, every betrayal, every trick. They don't get that kindness isn't softness, it's precision, it's control. It's choosing not to destroy someone even when you could. That's what scared them. That's what exposed them. That's what made them whisper your name like it's a problem they can't solve. Chosen one, if you feel this already sinking into your chest, press the like button and subscribe. That's your way of paying this message back and strengthening this mission we're building. Because you didn't get here by luck. You got here by walking through situations that should have broken you. You trusted people who didn't deserve a single piece of your heart. You stayed patient when others would have snapped. You held your fire when the world tried to drag you into their empty chaos. And now we're in the aftermath, where the silence says everything. It's the kind of silence that makes enemies panic. The kind that follows a storm they never saw coming. The truth is, they didn't expect you to survive. They expected you to fall apart backstage while they put on a fake victory show. But the universe had receipts tucked away for this exact moment. It watched you bend, but never break. It watched you stay human in a world full of pretenders wearing armor made of ego and fear. Meanwhile, you walked in with nothing but honesty, loyalty, and a heart that didn't know how to fake anything. And somehow, that made you the strongest person in the entire play. Look who's bowing now, the legend they tried to humiliate, the soul they tried to manipulate. Their whole plan fell apart because they misunderstood you from the start. They thought kindness meant you had no claws. They thought patience meant you had no limit. They thought gentleness meant you had no power. They were so wrong, it's embarrassing. Let's talk about the moment everything shifted. You remember it, the day you stopped apologizing for who you are, the day you stopped giving out chances like coupons, the day you realized your silence is louder than their entire personality. That was the moment the universe leveled the playing field in your favor. Call it timing, call it justice, call it the return of energy. Whatever name you choose, just know this. You earned this era of your life. Think back to your past for a second, not to reopen wounds, but to honor survival. Remember that person who tried to crush your spirit because they saw potential inside you that terrified them. The one who pretended you were replaceable until they realized no one came close. The one who talked big but folded whenever life asked them to show actual character. Their entire performance has collapsed now, and you're the reason. Your strength made their story fall apart. Chosen one, this might sting a bit, but hear it clearly. Your kindness was never the problem. Their insecurity was. Your softness was never the trap. Their ego was. You didn't confuse them by being gentle. You confused them because they finally saw kindness paired with power, and it exposed everything they were lacking. And here's the twist they never saw coming. Warriors who can stay gentle are always the most dangerous. You never needed to raise your voice. You never needed to prove anything. You never needed to fight dirty. You simply existed with a good heart, and that alone shook them harder than any revenge plan ever could. This is your rising moment. The moment where every story, every wound, every lesson finally makes sense. The universe didn't build you to be average. It built you to be the calm force that destroys lies, exposes fakes, and stands strong without losing softness. That's the paradox that ruined them. That's the truth that frees you. Keep walking forward, chosen one. You're not just surviving anymore. You're entering the era where your kindness becomes the very thing that makes the world tremble. And before we go any deeper, chosen one, let me tell you something the enemy never expected you to hear. This is the moment where your story finally turns in your favor. If you're still here, it means your heart didn't just survive the chaos. It learned how to study it. So do this one thing for yourself right now. Drop a comment with 777 to mark the moment you stop apologizing for your kindness and start owning it like the power it truly is. Because this next phase, it's built for warriors who fight with calm hands and quiet fire. And now we move step by step deeper into the truth they never wanted exposed. If you really are the chosen one, you'll feel the pull to stay until the final word. Not because I told you to, but because your spirit recognizes its own evolution when it hears it. Let's begin. Number 1. When they tried to play the soft one and got cut by their own assumptions. Funny how the people who bragged the loudest about being too smart to be fooled ended up exposing themselves the moment they tried to test you. They thought they had you mapped out like a cheap blueprint. They glanced at your kindness and screamed weakness before they ever bothered to understand the blueprint behind that softness. They thought your calm eyes meant you didn't see anything. They thought your warm voice meant you couldn't bite. They thought your patience meant you couldn't walk away. And the best part? They believed all of this with full confidence, like amateurs who convinced themselves they were experts. They whispered, "Oh, this one is easy. But tell me, chosen one, who's looking easy now?" Because after everything, look who's still standing with their dignity intact, and look who's left scrambling to explain why their little power games fell apart like wet paper in a storm. They built their entire illusion of superiority on a fantasy version of you, a version they invented because it made them feel bigger. But the moment real life pressed against their ego, their story ripped open. Let's drag this truth into the light. They never misjudged your strength. They misjudged their own intelligence. Thinking they could read you after 5 seconds of ego-fueled assumptions is the biggest joke the universe ever let play out. They thought your silence was submission. They never understood silence is what warriors use to observe, measure, calculate. Your quiet wasn't fear, it was strategy. They had no idea they were standing in front of someone who could end their entire performance without raising their voice. You ever notice how the loudest cowards always assume the softest person in the room is the most breakable? That's because they've never met someone who learned to weaponize kindness. They've never seen a gentle warrior, someone who could crush but chooses not to. And nothing terrifies insecure people more than power that doesn't need to flex. They looked at your love and called it desperation because they don't know how to love without expecting control in return. They looked at your patience and called it stupidity because they don't know how to wait without feeling threatened. They looked at your empathy and called it weakness because empathy makes them feel naked. People who fear depth always mock the ocean. And the irony. While they were too busy playing puppet master, you were reading every string they were trying to pull. You saw their tricks. You felt their intentions shift. You sensed the moment their words started carrying two meanings. You watched them play their little games, and instead of reacting, you learned. You gathered data. You took notes. You became the calm before a storm they never even checked the forecast for. Chosen one, do you realize how powerful that makes you? Most people explode the moment they feel disrespected, but you stayed composed. That rattled them. They expected tears, but you gave them quiet. They expected panic, but you gave them understanding. They expected chaos, but you gave them distance. And when you finally walked away, without screaming, without begging, without giving them one last chance to feel big, that was when they realized they had miscalculated the entire equation. Underestimating a gentle person is the fastest way to embarrass yourself in front of the universe. Let's talk about that look they gave you afterward. You know the one, the mixture of confusion and regret they tried to hide behind sarcasm. That look was fear, not fear of you hurting them, fear of you not needing them, fear of realizing you were never the one trapped. They were. They built a false sense of power by thinking they were the dominant one, and the moment you stepped back, they had nothing left to lean on but their own emptiness. Tell me, chosen one, haven't you seen this pattern your whole life? You walk into rooms with softness and people mistake it for permission. You show patience and they treat it like a blank contract. You extend love and they assume it's for free. But the moment you reclaim your energy, the moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop cushioning their ego, that's when their mask starts sliding off. Because you weren't weak. They were dependent. You weren't easy. They were predictable. You weren't desperate. They were entitled. You didn't break when they pushed. You adapted. You didn't crumble when they mocked. You learned. You didn't fight dirty when they tried to provoke you. You became quiet, and that silence changed everything. See, soft hearts don't shatter. They sharpen. And once sharpened, they slice through illusions that took years for your enemies to build. Picture this, a warrior who refuses to draw their sword until absolutely necessary. People mock that warrior, call them passive, call them soft. Then, the moment the sword finally moves, the entire battlefield goes silent. That's you. Your power isn't loud. Your power is steady, controlled, calculated. And when you finally withdraw your energy, it feels like a kingdom losing its son. That's why they panicked. That's why they whispered your name behind closed doors. That's why they replayed every moment in their head, trying to find where they lost control. They didn't lose control. They never had it. They were dancing on a stage they thought they owned, not realizing the lights were powered by your presence the whole time. Remove the power source, and the entire show collapses. Chosen one, here's a truth most people don't live long enough to understand. Kindness becomes dangerous the moment someone takes it for granted. Because kindness doesn't turn into cruelty, it turns into absence. And absence is the one punishment even the strongest ego can't survive. Let's answer the question sitting in the back of your mind. Why does it hurt them so much when I finally pull away? Because you were the only genuine thing in their world of shortcuts. Because your softness was the only place they didn't have to perform. Because your patience exposed their instability. Because your love was the only love they didn't earn, and losing it felt like losing a mirror that made them look better than they were. The universe didn't let their arrogance destroy you. It let their arrogance reveal them. And now they're sitting there replaying every moment where they thought they outsmarted you, realizing the whole time you were simply letting them talk, letting them show their hand, letting them expose themselves without lifting a finger. You didn't punish them. You let them punish themselves with their own assumptions. This is what happens when people mistake a gentle warrior for an unarmed target. This is what happens when people think softness is the same as surrender. This is what happens when people forget the quietest person in the room often holds the sharpest truth. And now, chosen one, now they know. Your kindness was never weakness. It was the warning. They just didn't listen. The universe didn't build you to be feared. It built you to be respected. And today, they finally learned the difference. Number 2. When kindness wasn't your limit, it was your lever of power. Wild how they thought your silence meant softness, when in reality it was the sound of someone who already knew they could win. They never understood the truth, chosen one. Your kindness didn't come from a weak place. It came from a place so strong that it scared people who only feel powerful when they're stepping on someone else. You weren't kind because life spared you. You were kind because you survived things that would have turned most people bitter, cold, or cruel. You carried storms in your chest and still chose to walk gently. That alone makes you stronger than every loudmouth who tried to test you. Let's make this crystal clear. You didn't avoid conflict because you feared it. You avoided it because you mastered it. You knew exactly what you were capable of. You knew the edge of every blade inside you. You knew the wars you could have started. You knew the peace you could have broken. And still, you chose gentleness because you didn't need chaos to prove anything. Only someone with real power makes decisions from that level of calm. People mistake restraint for weakness until they realize it took more strength to hold back than it would have taken to strike. Now imagine this, a warrior standing at the center of a battlefield, surrounded by noise, chaos, and challengers begging for a fight. But the warrior doesn't lift their sword. They don't react. They don't shout. They simply stand there, steady, breathing slow, analyzing everything. Anyone watching from the outside would think the warrior is passive, until they see the entire battlefield shifting around that stillness. That's you. You change the outcome without making a scene. Imagine this too, a lion walking past a group of barking dogs. The dogs scream louder, trying to prove something. The lion doesn't even turn its head. Why? Because lions don't explain themselves to noise. They don't roar for attention. They don't respond to anything beneath their level. That's you again. Your silence wasn't ignorance. It was dominance without theatrics. And one more. Picture a blade so sharp it can split stone, but the person holding it chooses not to swing it unless the moment is truly worth it. That's the kind of internal strength you carry. You know exactly how much power you have, which is why you don't waste it on people who thrive on drama and cheap shots. So tell me, chosen one, how could they ever think you were weak? You weren't gentle because you lacked an edge. You were gentle because you learned how to control your edges. You mastered your emotions. You mastered your impulses. You mastered your fire. You mastered your reactions. Do you know how rare that is? People who hurt others without thinking call themselves strong, but people who can hurt and still choose not to. That's real strength. That's real evolution. That's real power that rattles insecure souls. They thought you were soft because they only know one kind of strength: loud strength. They've never seen calm strength, controlled strength, or silent strength until you. If you've ever wondered, why did they misunderstand me so badly? Here is your answer. You showed a type of strength they had never encountered. When someone's worldview is built on dominance, manipulation, and ego, your vibe threatens their system. They don't understand kindness with boundaries. They don't understand softness with strategy. They don't understand hearts that can heal rather than harm. You didn't show weakness. You showed maturity. You showed mastery. You showed depth. And insecure people choke on depth. It reminds them how shallow their world really is. Let's break this down even deeper. They thought you were easy because you didn't clap back immediately. But your silence was you choosing the battlefield. Your calm was you choosing your timing. You weren't avoiding the fight. You were letting life handle the people who overestimated themselves. And guess what? Life handled them perfectly. Remember those moments when someone pushed you, waiting for you to snap so they could call you emotional? You didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, you watched them unravel under their own behavior. That wasn't weakness. That was control. Remember the times someone underestimated your value, thinking you needed them more than they needed you. When you finally walked away, they felt the loss 10 times harder. That wasn't weakness. That was power, speaking in a language only real ones understand. Remember the people who called you too forgiving. They didn't realize forgiveness was a sign that you were no longer carrying their weight. That wasn't weakness. That was release. That was growth. That was freedom. And here's something important. They didn't mistake you for a lamb because you acted like one. They mistook you for a lamb because that's the only category their mind had for someone who wasn't loud, aggressive, or manipulative. They thought you were unarmed. They thought you were untrained. They thought you were unaware. What they failed to see was the lion behind the softness. Not a roaring lion, not a hunting lion, a lion who chooses when to unleash power. That's the most dangerous kind. Let's address another question sitting quietly inside your mind. Why did my strength bother them so much? Because your strength wasn't the kind they could see. It wasn't on display. It wasn't loud. It wasn't insecure. It didn't need validation. Your strength was internal, structured, disciplined. And nothing threatens weak people more than someone whose power doesn't come from attention. It made them feel small. It made them feel exposed. It made them feel powerless in comparison. People who rely on volume hate people who rely on silence. Silence highlights the truth. Silence exposes intentions. Silence forces insecure souls to hear their own emptiness. Imagine this last example, a mirror, not just any mirror, a mirror that reflects people exactly as they are, without filters or illusions. That's what your kindness did. When they stood in front of you, they saw a version of themselves they didn't want to confront. Your gentleness revealed their cruelty. Your patience revealed their impulsiveness. Your loyalty revealed their selfishness. Your consistency revealed their instability. So of course they tried to label you as weak. It was easier than admitting they were outmatched. Chosen one, you were never the lamb. You were the warrior who didn't need to roar. You were the storm disguised as a breeze. You were the fire that learned how to warm instead of burn. And the universe didn't give you that strength by accident. It shaped you through pressure, pain, lessons, and situations that forced you to evolve past survival. You learned how to fight without fighting. You learned how to protect your peace without losing yourself. You learned how to stay human in a world that rewards cruelty. Strength doesn't show itself in how loudly someone strikes. Strength shows itself in how steadily someone stands. And you stood quietly, peacefully, powerfully. You weren't kind because you were weak. You were kind because strength gave you the luxury to choose kindness. And now they finally see it. Now they finally understand the truth they were too blind to notice. Your kindness wasn't your limit. It was your strategy. It was your weapon. It was your power. And now the warrior steps forward, gentle hands, steady heart, unshakable strength, and the world finally understands what it's dealing with. A gentle warrior is the most unstoppable force the universe ever created. Number 3, when you refused to play small and their world started shaking. Nothing scares insecure people more than the moment you stop making yourself smaller just to fit inside their tiny imagination. There came a day, chosen one, when something inside you snapped back into place. Not broken, not damaged, just done shrinking, done folding yourself into quiet corners so other people didn't feel threatened by your presence. Done watering yourself down so their fragile egos wouldn't crack under real light. You stopped apologizing for taking up space, and suddenly the room felt different. The air shifted, the balance flipped, and the people who thought they had power over you started panicking without even understanding why. Imagine this. A person who's been dimming their light for years finally turns it back on full brightness. Everyone who got comfortable in the shadows suddenly feels exposed. That's what happened when you stopped shrinking. Your growth didn't hurt them, it revealed them. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you because you realized explanations don't fix blindness. They wanted control, not clarity. They wanted the version of you that made them feel superior. They wanted the easy target. But once you aligned your gentle heart with your warrior spine, their entire character arc crashed headfirst into reality. Your evolution wasn't loud, it was lethal. Nothing destroys a villain faster than a hero who finally stands up straight. And here's the part your mind keeps replaying. Why did everything change so fast once you stopped playing small? Because shrinking was the only thing keeping them comfortable. Once you grew, you outgrew them. Once you stood up, they couldn't stand next to you. Once you evolved, their whole act became irrelevant. They expected you to break. Instead, you became someone they can't even approach without feeling the sting of their own failure. That's the power of refusing to shrink. That's the danger of a gentle warrior rising. Number 4. When you're quiet, broke them louder than any revenge ever could. Silence is the one weapon cowards never see coming because they're too busy waiting for the explosion that never arrives. They were so sure they knew how you'd react. Chosen one. They wanted the chaos version of you, the broken version, the version that screams and begs and proves them right. Instead, you handed them something far more dangerous. Nothing. No rage, no drama, no long paragraphs trying to fix what was never real. Just silence sharp enough to slice through every lie they told themselves. Imagine this. Someone pushes a door expecting resistance, and the door doesn't move because you already left the building. That's what boundaries did to them. Your no hit harder than any argument. Your distance exposed more truth than any confrontation. You didn't give them war. You gave them indifference, and that felt like the universe turning its back on them. Nothing kills a manipulator faster than realizing the person they depended on emotionally no longer cares. Now look at them, replaying old messages like detectives trying to solve their own crime, studying screenshots, analyzing your tone, rereading conversations they once ignored. They're desperate to find the exact moment they lost control of the narrative. But here's the truth they can't swallow. They never controlled anything. You just finally stopped giving them access. You remember how they pushed you, tested you, kept poking at your kindness just to see if they could make you break. They wanted a monster so they could play the victim. They wanted a reaction so they could feel powerful. But you didn't give them the show. You didn't give them the meltdown. You didn't give them the emotional fireworks they rehearsed for. You gave them maturity. You gave them boundaries. You gave them silence. And silence was the monster they couldn't defeat. Number 5. When your power broke their entire definition of strength. People who only understand power as domination will always mistake kindness for weakness, right up until the moment it destroys their entire worldview. They never learned what real power looks like, chosen one. They grew up thinking warriors are loud, aggressive, cold, untouchable. They thought strength meant bruised knuckles, raised voices, and egos too heavy to carry. So, when they met you, someone who could care without collapsing, someone who could be gentle without bowing, someone who could love without losing themselves, their brains short-circuited. They simply couldn't process it. Imagine this: someone sees a calm ocean and assumes it's shallow until a single wave rises up and reminds them it's deeper than their entire understanding. That's what you were. They misread your calm as emptiness. Not knowing calm is something only mastered by people who survived storms. True power is quiet because it doesn't need an audience. Strong people don't shout. Strong people don't show off. Strong people don't need to crush others to feel tall. That's why you confuse them. Your strength didn't look like their version of strength. You didn't walk around demanding respect. You simply earned it by existing with authenticity they couldn't imitate. And here's the question whispering in the back of your mind: why did my softness bother them so much? Because your softness exposed their insecurity. Your ability to care made their emotional emptiness obvious. Your peace made their chaos undeniable. Your restraint made their impulsiveness embarrassing. Imagine a blade being forged, heated until it glows, hammered with force, then cooled in silence. That cooling is what gives steel its strength. You're the same. Your fire shaped you, but your gentleness sealed your power. They thought you needed to prove yourself. They didn't know the most dangerous fighters don't need to prove anything. You were never the weak one. You were the evolved one. And now they finally understand what real power looks like. Number 6. When they realized you were out of their league the entire time. Nothing terrifies a manipulator more than someone who sees every move and still refuses to play. They tried to touch you, chosen one, but they never understood you were standing on ground they hadn't even evolved enough to reach. You operated on a completely different level, not louder, not harsher, not more aggressive, just higher. While they swung their emotions around like weapons, you stayed steady, collected, gentle, but immovable. And that balance drove them insane because it exposed something they never wanted to face. You couldn't be controlled. Imagine this: someone tries to pull puppet strings, only to realize the puppet is fully awake, staring right back at them. That's what you were. They tugged, you didn't move. They baited, you didn't bite. They performed, you didn't clap. Your unshakable calm held up a mirror to their chaos, and the reflection cracked their ego clean in half. How do you manipulate someone who sees the manipulation and still chooses kindness? You don't. And that one truth shattered every tactic they relied on. Your kindness wasn't compliance, it was awareness. You read their intentions before they even finished their sentences. You saw the pressure points they thought were hidden. You felt the shifts in tone they assumed you missed. You weren't blind, you were merciful. That's why you were untouchable. You weren't playing defense, you were choosing not to attack. Imagine storms trying to intimidate a mountain. No matter how hard they scream, the mountain doesn't move. That's you. Their noise couldn't shake you. Their ego couldn't intimidate you. Their tricks couldn't corner you. And their worst fear came true. You knew exactly what they were doing, and you stayed kind anyway. That level of self-control, that level of awareness, it made you untouchable. It made them powerless, and it forced them to face the truth. They never stood a chance against someone like you. Number 7. When their greed set the trap, and they were the ones who fell into it. People don't drown because you threw them in the ocean. They drown because they walked in thinking it was shallow. They thought they were geniuses, chosen one. They thought they were playing you. They thought your generosity was a weakness, your patience was a flaw, your forgiveness was a free pass. They treated your open heart like an open door, something they could walk in and out of whenever their boredom needed entertainment. They thought they were using you. But the universe has a sick sense of humor, and it loves flipping the script at the perfect time, because every time they exploited you, something was happening that they didn't even see. You were evolving. You weren't breaking. You weren't folding. You weren't losing. You were learning. Imagine this: someone keeps pushing a wall, laughing because it doesn't fight back. They don't realize the wall is reinforced each time they hit it. They don't notice the structure getting stronger while their own hands start bleeding. That's exactly what happened. Every line they crossed became a blueprint for your next boundary. Every trick they tried exposed a part of their character they meant to hide. Every insult sharpened your intuition until it turned surgical. They thought they were taking advantage of you, but really they were training you. Here's the question burning in your mind. How did they not realize they were destroying their own chance with me? Because people who exploit kindness aren't thinking long-term. They only think as far as their ego can see. They assumed you'd always be there, always be forgiving, always be soft. They never considered the possibility that you were quietly collecting data the entire time. Imagine this: a thief keeps returning to a house because the door is always unlocked. Until one day, the lock changes, the lights turn on, and they realize the homeowner has been watching the cameras the whole time. That's what your evolution felt like to them. They panicked the moment they realized you finally closed the door they kept sprinting through. Your generosity wasn't naivety, your patience wasn't blindness, your forgiveness wasn't permission. You were studying them while they were underestimating you. And the best part? The whole trap they set, the whole game they played. It backfired so perfectly, it almost feels poetic. They thought they could drain you. Instead, you outgrew them. They thought they could bend you. Instead, you strengthened your spine. They thought they could use you. Instead, they exposed themselves. Now they're stuck replaying everything, trying to figure out why their strategy didn't work. But strategies built on arrogance always crumble. Exploitation always collapses. And people who abuse kindness always lose access to it. They thought they were winning. They didn't know you were taking notes, and those notes became the blueprint for your evolution. Number 8. When your patience became the silent weapon they never saw drawn. Never mistake a warrior's stillness for surrender. Still water hides the deepest power. They called you slow, they called you passive, they called you naive. But you and I both know what was really happening, chosen one. You were studying the battlefield while they were dancing around like amateurs celebrating imaginary victories. They mistook your patience for weakness because they have never met someone who can sit in absolute calm while quietly preparing a move that ends the entire game. Imagine this: two players at a chessboard. One is slamming pieces, laughing loud, celebrating every tiny capture. The other is silent, relaxed, eyes scanning patterns the loud one can't even see. Guess who wins? Not the noisy one, the one who waits, watches, learns. That was you. Every provocation they threw was just another clue. Every insult was a tells. Every attempt to shake you became another map pointing you toward the truth. Warriors don't react. Warriors calculate. You weren't frozen. You were focused. You weren't scared. You were strategic. And here's the part that still haunts them. While they were celebrating their little victories, you were building an exit so clean, so precise, so sudden that by the time they realized you were gone, the door had already locked behind you. They thought you didn't see their games. You saw everything. They thought you were emotionally attached. You were emotionally observing. They thought you'd stay forever. You were already planning your escape route. Imagine a storm pretending it's strong until the mountain it tries to break doesn't move an inch. That's what your patience did to them. Your silence crushed their ego harder than any argument could. Your lack of reaction forced them to face themselves, and that was the one enemy they could never defeat. So if you're wondering, why did my patience bother them so much? Here's your answer. Because patience is power they can't control. Patience is intelligence they can't compete with. Patience is the calm that ends a battle before it even starts. They expected you to explode. Instead, you evolved. And that single choice ruined their entire game. Number 9. When your final move was quiet, and it still hit harder than any war. Some endings don't come with fire. Some endings come with a door quietly closing, and that sound is louder than any scream. This was the moment everything shifted, chosen one. Not because you attacked, not because you fought, not because you exposed them in some dramatic showdown. No, you did something far more lethal. You stopped engaging. You stopped feeding the chaos. You stopped letting them drag you into arguments designed to wound you, and that single choice, delivered with calm hands and steady breath, hit them harder than any explosion ever could. Imagine this. They're standing there, ready for a fight, rehearsing speeches, sharpening insults, preparing for the version of you they thought they could predict. Then you show up with silence. No reaction, no emotional fireworks, no need to defend who you are, just quiet, grounded truth. Your lack of participation made their entire performance collapse on itself. You didn't destroy them with anger, you destroyed them by no longer offering access. And that was the move that ended everything. You didn't explain yourself because you finally understood explanations don't cure arrogance. You didn't defend yourself because innocence doesn't need a lawyer. You didn't confront them because confrontation is only necessary when both parties are on the same level. And you had risen far beyond theirs. The day you walked away, your eyes were still gentle, but something in them had changed. There was a calm finality in your gaze, a quiet message that said, "This chapter is over. I choose peace now." And that single look cut deeper than rage ever could. Imagine a stage where one actor suddenly steps off mid-scene. The spotlight stays on the villain standing alone, exposed, without someone to play off. That's what your departure felt like to them. They lost their script. They lost their power. They lost their control. They lost the story they thought they were writing. And the silence that followed? Devastating, punishing, unavoidable. It echoed in their mind like a truth they couldn't unhear. It forced them to sit with themselves, something they were never strong enough to do. They replayed everything, trying to understand how they lost someone they assumed would always be there. But the answer was simple. The moment they stopped respecting your kindness, they lost the privilege of it. Your silence wasn't empty. Your silence was the ending, a clean one, a final one, a powerful one, and it was the one move they never prepared for, because they never imagined you would walk away with your head high, your heart intact, and your gentleness still shining. Number 10. When your absence hit harder than your presence ever did. People don't notice the air they breathe until it's gone. Then suddenly they're choking. Chosen one, the moment you pulled back, not halfway, not hesitating, but fully, completely, with the kind of emotional precision only a gentle warrior can master, the universe flipped the lights off in their world. You didn't slam a door. You didn't make a scene. You simply withdrew your energy, and the silence that followed turned into a void so heavy they could feel it pressing against their chest. Imagine this. Somebody spends so long standing next to a warm fire that they start assuming the warmth belongs to them. Then one morning, the fire goes out, not in anger, but in choice. Suddenly, the cold hits them like a slap. That's the void you left behind. Your absence wasn't just empty space. It was a mirror showing them everything they took for granted. They thought you were replaceable until they had to live without the version of peace only you could give. Energetically, you unplugged. Emotionally, you shut the channel. Spiritually, you stepped into a new lane where their hands could no longer reach. And it created a vacuum so intense it felt like standing inside a black hole, realizing too late that the light source they depended on was never theirs to control. Now, look at them, regret mixed with disbelief, loss tangled with confusion. They keep asking themselves questions that don't have answers anymore. How did I lose them? When did the shift happen? Why does it hurt so much now? Because chosen one, they didn't just lose a person. They lost access to kindness that healed them. They lost patience that protected them. They lost softness that steadied them. They lost the rare energy that made their chaotic life feel less empty. Imagine a hallway echoing after footsteps fade. That echo is what haunts them now, the memory of someone irreplaceable walking away with calm strength. They fumbled something they weren't even ready to receive. They mishandled a soul that only wanted connection, not conquest. They played games with a heart that wasn't playing at all. And now, they're sitting in that void, replaying everything, realizing the truth they never wanted to face. You were the rare one, the grounding force, the quiet anchor, the gentle warrior whose presence held their world together more than they ever admitted. Your absence didn't break them, it revealed them. And that revelation is something they'll feel every single day, because nothing replaces a heart like yours. Number 11, when they tried to cash in late and found the door sealed shut. People only realize time is precious when the clock hits 0, and yours just did. Chosen one, this is the part they never believed would happen. They thought your kindness was endless. They thought your patience was permanent. They thought your loyalty came with infinite refills. They treated your heart like a convenience store, open 24/7, always stocked, always welcoming, no consequences. They didn't know gentle warriors don't run on unlimited grace. They run on awareness, and once awareness hits, everything changes. You gave them time, more than they deserved. You gave them chances, more than they earned. But every act of kindness has an expiration date, and they ignored it like fools who assume a product stays fresh forever. Now the date has passed. The door is locked. The light is off. And they're standing outside with an expired ticket, wondering why the train doesn't stop for them anymore. Respect the expiration date, or lose the privilege forever. Imagine this. Someone shows up at the airport hours late, waving their old ticket, insisting the plane should come back just for them. That's exactly how they look now, desperate, confused, and painfully unaware of how reality works. The universe does not rewind for people who waste what they were gifted. Gentle warriors don't leave doors cracked open. When they walk away, they seal the frame, reinforce the hinges, and burn the key. Not out of spite, but out of evolution. You reach the point where going back would have meant shrinking again. And you're done shrinking. So if they're standing there asking, why won't they let me back in? The answer is simple. You had a chance. You wasted it. The door didn't close on you. You closed it on yourself. And chosen one, your life is better for it. Number 12. When your disappearance taught them what your presence never could. Some people don't learn when you're loving them. They learn when your silence becomes the only voice they hear. Chosen one, this is the chapter they never prepared for. The one where your absence does the teaching, your presence was too gentle to deliver. When you were around, they overlooked your strength because it felt effortless. They missed your power because you carried it quietly. They ignored your value because you never weaponized it. But the moment you walked away, suddenly everything became clear to them in a way that felt like punishment from the universe itself. Imagine this. A priceless artifact sits on a shelf for years, ignored by someone who doesn't understand its worth. One day it's gone, placed in a museum, protected behind glass, and only then does the fool realize what they mishandled. That's what your absence did. It turned you from ordinary in their eyes to irreplaceable in their reality. They can't hate you. You never hurt them. You simply stopped letting them hurt you, and that is a different kind of power. And now, look at the position they're in. They don't have anger to cling to. You gave them no scandal, no chaos, no meltdown to blame. Your departure wasn't dramatic. It was clean, controlled, dignified. You left them with nothing to attack except the mirror. You ever wonder why regret hits people hardest when the person they wronged leaves gracefully? Because dignity removes excuses. When you don't scream, when you don't fight, when you don't play dirty, they're forced to face the truth raw. They ruined something healthy. They mishandled something rare. They lost someone who meant well. Imagine a room that once held warmth. The moment you step out, the chill hits like a warning. They walk into that cold now, every day. Not because you wanted revenge, but because withdrawal is what happens naturally when someone finally learns their own pattern of destruction. And here's the part they can't admit. Your absence didn't just hurt them. It educated them. It taught them what loyalty feels like only after it's gone. It taught them what consistency feels like only after the pattern breaks. It taught them what real kindness feels like only after theirs runs dry. They don't hate you because hate requires impact, and you made your impact without hurting them. All they can do is sit with the uncomfortable truth that they destroyed something they now realize they needed. Something that grounded them. Something that softened them. Something that made their chaotic world feel survivable. Imagine the final echo in a canyon after your voice fades, lingering, haunting, impossible to silence. That's what your absence feels like to them now. They replay every moment because there's no next chapter with you in it. They revisit every conversation because there's no new message to override the past. They feel every mistake because there's no more kindness from you to cushion the blow. Chosen one, your absence became the lesson life tried to teach them the easy way. They ignored that version, so life gave them the hard one. And trust me, they'll never forget it. And now we reach the final truth. Chosen one. You didn't just walk away. You raised the standard to a height they can't reach anymore. Everyone they meet now feels like a downgrade, a reminder of the treasure they mishandled. Your kindness wasn't weakness, it was restraint. And once you stopped restraining your self-respect, the universe closed the chapter for good. If this message hit the place it was meant to, press like, subscribe, share this with another warrior, and drop 77 in the comments to mark the rise of your new standards.